As Congress still struggles to pass another stimulus bill to offer Americans financial relief that they desperately need during this ongoing pandemic, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin continues to repeat the same lies that have been debunked over and over again in regard to the enhanced unemployment benefits. So recently he was speaking to Martha Raddatz. She pushed back just a little bit, but when we come back from this clip, we're gonna push back a lot. Take a look.
So I think on the concept, we absolutely agree on enhanced unemployment. We want to fix the issue where in some cases people are overpaid, and we want to make sure there's the right incentives. But again, let me just emphasize, we put on the table a proposal. Let's extend it for 1 week at the same rate while we negotiate so we don't hurt the American public.
So you do think it is a disincentive to find a job if you have that extra $600?
There's no question in certain cases where we're paying people more to work, stay home than to work, that's created issues in the entire economy. But let me just say, you have to look at all these things.
I want to interrupt you there for just 1 second. It's not all the evidence. A Yale study from this month refutes that, saying many economists who have studied the benefits said that so far they don't see any evidence in labor market data that the payments are affecting the rate at which people are returning to work during the pandemic.
Well, let me just say I went to Yale. I agree on certain things. I don't always agree. There's a Chicago study that goes through all the people that are overpaid. But let's just face it, we know factually, okay? There are cases where people are overpaid.
I went to Yale. No one cares. No one cares that you went to Yale. And I looked for that Chicago study, and there's no Chicago study that provides credible evidence indicating that Americans are choosing to stay home rather than go back to work because of these enhanced unemployment benefits. In fact, why don't we talk about the credible study that was cited there by Yale and give you the relevant points that were brought up in it. So the researchers found no evidence the recipients of more generous benefits were less likely to return to work. They also found that workers who received larger increases in their unemployment benefits relative to their wages did not experience greater declines in employment after the CARES Act was enacted. Also, the report found that workers receiving larger increases in unemployment benefits experienced very similar gains in employment by early May relative to workers with less generous benefit increases. People with more generously expanded benefits also resumed working at a similar or slightly quicker rate than others did, according to this report. And by the way, a top official with the Minneapolis Federal Reserve was also interviewed recently, and he had some thoughts about these enhanced unemployment benefits, in addition to the need to possibly shut down for the second time in order to save the economy. Take a look.
One of the Republican arguments is that at $600, there's some number of workers who are getting paid more than they would in a job, and therefore they're staying at home. Do you see any evidence in the data that supports public policy based on that idea?
Well, not right now, not when 20 million people are out of work relative to February. There's just so many fewer jobs than there are workers available. At some point, it'll be an issue. When we get the unemployment rate eventually back down to 5%, and we want to get it back down to 4% or 3.5% where it was before, yes, that disincentive to work becomes material. But right now, it's simply not a factor in the macro economy that we have in the US. If we were to lock down hard for a month or 6 weeks, we could get the case count down so that our testing and our contact tracing was actually enough to control it. The way that it's happening in the Northeast right now, they had a rocky start, but they're doing a pretty good job right now. Now, if we don't do that and we just have this raging virus spreading throughout the country with flare-ups and local lockdowns for the next year or two, which is entirely possible, we're gonna see many, many more business bankruptcies, small businesses, big businesses, and that's gonna take a lot of time to recover from.
So, Woz, we've talked about these lies coming from Republicans for quite some time now. And what amazes me is their utter disdain for Americans overall. Like, to the point where someone bringing in $2,400 in unemployment benefits is considered like astronomically high. And these types of arguments come from people like Steve Mnuchin, who built his wealth. He built his wealth off of committing fraud and wrongfully foreclosing on people during the 2008 economic collapse. That's how he made his wealth with One West Bank. And he's turning around and he's pointing fingers at working Americans. blaming them and defaming them as lazy people who don't want to go back to work. There are no jobs. That's part of the problem. But I'm sorry, I wanted to go to you and get your thoughts.
Yeah, man, this is probably the issue that grinds my gears, probably more than anything in our politics right now. And it's simple. When I hear Mnuchin get on TV and say that, he's essentially parroting a stance from the Republican Party. It's just dog whistle to me. It's the people who are actually hurting within that party who vote reliably Republican. When he says work is being disincentivized, essentially he's saying there's a bunch of Negroes and brown people who are benefiting from this, who refuse to get their asses up and go to work, right? That's a one. And the con always freaking works. Even the people who are actually hurting right now and aren't able to work. But if I had a chance to speak to some of those people, I would tell them how the game is given away every single time. When the Fed gave $4 trillion to the market, nobody said it disincentivized responsible trading. Nobody said that. Nobody says when American Airlines, basically a week and a half into this thing, first people with their hands out after years of billions and billions in profits and stock buybacks and ridiculously unhealthy corporate debt, nobody came out. Nobody came out and said, we're incentivizing risky, stupid business behavior. We're incentivizing greed and stupidity within the market. We just wrote a check for $4 trillion. There was no debate. There was no chat. There was no conversation. We just did it for them. But normal people, working people, now that they're in a bind, actual binds, rent, foreclosures, like the people at American, I'm not talking about the people who might, our flight attendants or even our pilots, the corporate board, they're not in danger of anything. The people who actually benefited from the stock buybacks and things of that nature, they're not in danger of anything. They're gonna still have 2 summer homes. They're gonna get a crazy parachute if the company goes belly up. There is no danger for them. And you never hear this from them. You will never hear them say that the oligarchs of the United States of America are incentivized to be greedy, risky, practice bad business when we bail them out with the wave of a pen. There's no Mitch McConnell, there's no Pelosi, there's no Trump. Nobody questions it. We just freaking do it for them. And so that's why Mnuchin going on TV, and even Martha Raddatz, let's face it, she's not exactly Anna Kasparian now. You know what I'm saying? Even she had to be like, what the hell is going on, brother?
The negotiations in Congress and the legislation and the back and forth. You're right. Federal Reserve comes in is like, we're gonna bail you out. You're gonna be fine. And that's exactly why there's this disconnect right now between what average Americans are experiencing with their finances and what we're seeing in the stock market. I mean, think about it. Consumer spending is not high right now. People are, if they have any disposable income, they're saving it. So for instance, on average before the pandemic, there was about an 8% savings rate among average Americans. That number has now increased to 20% because people aren't going out. They're not spending on restaurants or trips or products. A lot of small businesses are getting hurt as a result of that.
In the case of our president, prostitutes, like guys are cutting back now.
Always keeping it real. I love it. No, but I mean, the stock market was supposed to be driven by consumer activity, and that's not the case anymore. It's based on Federal Reserve printing money, and yeah, you're right. The corporate CEOs are going to be fine. They're not hurting. And on top of that, during the CARES Act, Congress handed over $500 billion to Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and told him, hey, help out your corporate buddies, no transparency, no nothing. That was on top of the Federal Reserve already bailing out these massive corporations. So it's beyond infuriating to hear this type of defamation coming from members of the Trump administration as Americans suffer under this broken economic system in the middle of a pandemic.
We could tomorrow. We could start on infrastructure in America all over the country. People would get good jobs, well-paying jobs. They get bennies, they get all of that. With the wave of a pen, we could do it. We could afford it. We could make it happen tomorrow for normal people, out of work people all across America. And I'm not just talking about because a lot of people think when it's a big government spend, it's only gonna help, people in the cities on the coast and all of that stuff. No, I'm talking about the infrastructure of this country is deteriorating everywhere. And it would come at a fraction of the $4 trillion we gave to the market. And we would be putting real normal Americans in dignified jobs, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're not working at Walmart where they get to treat you however they want and act like you're some type of corporate slave. Or in the case of Amazon, where this dude is richer than God, right? And his workers are working under some of the most obscene conditions. It's just, like this stuff could be done tomorrow. And we used to do things like this all the time, or at least, back in the 40s or whatever, FDR. We used to do big things like this. We used to see the government as able to do things that can help people. Now we just help the freaking stock market.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.